When you're looking for graphics to use in your file, you might find that the animated files come as sprite sheets. But how do you use those in Python? Let's find out. So this file is something I downloaded for free. This is just an animation of an explosion, and it's in a format which is quite common, which is a sprite sheets, where each frame is just placed in a single graphic in a sort of fixed location in a grid or grid style. But what we want to do is get out a portion of that file. And what I've found is that there's something called Spritesheet, which is a module you can use in Python. So let's import Spritesheet, and Pygame is immediately saying it doesn't know what that is because I haven't installed it. So we're going to go to settings, and let's add a new module. Let's search for Spritesheet, and here we have Pygame Spritesheet. That's the one that you want. Install package. Let that install. Okay, so that's good. And actually, what you have in there is a class. So what we actually want to do is from Spritesheet import the class Spritesheet. There we go. So in the rest of the file here, I've already got some predefined stuff. We've got the color black. We've got this filling, which is all stuff we did in the previous video with an events loop and how setting up the screen. So this is all fairly standard stuff. What we need to do is put on the screen the explosion. So we're going to define our class for this explosion. We're going to call it explosion. And it inherits from Pygame Sprite. There we go. And we must always, when we use the sprite, in the init we have to call the parent class. So let's get this right. And let's just do it like that for the moment. Pygame Sprite. I want to call the init that will call the parent class. Now what we want to do is get hold of that file. Now I've saved that in a folder called images relative to the current module. So let's get that module path. Now we haven't imported OS. We'll get that from the magic file parameter, and then that means our file name relative to that. Module path, images, and the name of the file is explosion.png. And now we're going to use Spritesheet, the Spritesheet class, to open that file. So you give it the file name, and then what you need to give it here is the number of columns and the number of rows. So if we go and have a look at that file, number of columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then number of rows, there is 6 rows there. So it's number of columns 8, number of rows 6. So what I'm going to do now, that will allow us to access files within there. What we're going to do is use Spritesheet just to create a series of images, which we're going to call a film strip, which is going to be a list of all the images. And actually we're going to make this a member of the class because we're going to need to use that. And we're going to use an index into the Spritesheet. So do a range, and it's just the number of images in that Spritesheet, 6 times 8. Each time we get the image out, we are going to create a new surface, not a sprite, a surface. And what we're going to do is the size of that, we can actually ask Spritesheet for the size of each of those individual frames. So what we do is we do sprite size. That will, the XY, the width and height of that image will be returned, and we'll create the surface of the right size. And then we use the Spritesheet to blit the image that we want onto that surface. So we're blitting it onto image, and which image are we going to take out of the Spritesheet? Image I, and let's put it in 0, 0, just go straight onto it to the corner. And now we add that image to our list of images film strip. There. So now that film strip at the end of that loop will contain each of those frames in order. Now we're going to start off at frame 0. We've got to keep track of which frame we are on at any time. Remember, when we set up any sort of sprite, you need to have this special member called image, and we initially set that to film strip 0, and also with these sprites you need to extract the rectangle. So this sets where the position is and the size of the sprite. We get that straight from the image. Now, when we create this explosion, where is it going to appear on the screen? Well, let's make those parameters x, y. So when you create an explosion, you say where it is. And here we use it, so adjust the rectangle's position. We're going to use this thing called center. So the center of that sprite will be at x, y. So that will position that explosion with its center at that coordinate. Now, that will, so far, if I've got this right, well, we haven't created the image down here. Let's instantiate one of these explosion objects down here. So I've already created a group which is empty. Let's put an explosion in that group. So we're going to say explosion equals explosion. And where do we put it? Let's put it at 300, 300. Then add it to the all group. So we add that to the group, and then in this loop here, what we're doing is we're clearing it with black. We're updating it, which at the moment we haven't created any special code for that. We'll do that in a minute, and then you draw it on the screen. So if we have this right, then well, there's a mistake, and the place we made the mistake was here. We need to pass in self. Oop. There we go. That's a bit of boilerplate code. Very easy to get that wrong. And OS join is wrong. That should be OS path join. And there it's drawn the first frame of the image. Now it's not animating, so why is it not animating? Because we haven't told it to animate. So we've got to put in here, we'll do this using update. So best way of doing this is increment the frame. And then what we're going to do is change the image, self.image. And we pull out whatever the current frame is. So that should animate. There we go. And then it crashes because list index out of range, because what's happened is we've got past the end of the length of that. So there's various things we can do here. Let's just do a fairly straightforward fix for that. So if the frame is equal to the length of the film strip, then reset the frame back to 0 again. So there's other ways of doing that, but that's a fairly straightforward way. So now hopefully what we should have here is a yes. And is that going to constant? Right, so you can see that the frame rate, there's something weird going on with the frame rate, and it's not a constant. And that's because this is an important thing you need to know when it comes to keeping control of timings of things, especially when it comes to animation in Pygame. So what you need to do is use Pygame's clock to control the frame rate. So one advantage of this is, first of all, you get a constant frame rate, so it won't jump and change depending on how fast what the computer's doing at the time. But also you can slow things down if the frame rate is too fast. So what you need to do is you need to set up a clock, Pygame clock, and then inside the loop effectively you're putting in a delay determined by the clock, so it's a clock tick. And what you put in here is the frame rate. So if you put a low number, it's actually going to go slower. So let's put 40 and see what happens. And I missed out. It's not Pygame clock, it's Pygame. It's a time module. Pygame.time. There we go. And there is the animation, and that should stay at a constant speed because it's been controlled by the clock.